to say I was rather surprised that Bruce asked me to have a show. He was on my hiring committee back in 1991, and I've often wondered how many times he's regretted that. I have given him so much grief over the past 25 years, but I really and he has always, of course, if you know Bruce, he's always handled it with diplomacy and graciousness, and I've always appreciated that. I also want to thank the crew. HEMA has just been wonderful. Whitney was a student of mine a few years back. I won't say how many. And she's been working at the museum quite a while. And then the installers, Art Miller kind of heads the whole thing, and then Benaya and Michael and Andrew are such professionals. When I'm working with these little things in the studio, I put a pin up and it takes a couple of minutes, and I go on to the next one. They're taking the bubble and mounting these things, and I get to go a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. So that was kind of nice. Okay. Also, is Mary here? Is Mary Davidson here? I have to have a special thanks for Mary because a lot of us were so disappointed when the bookstore closed. And she's the one who made that gallery possible. And then Q Sung came back in and did this marvelous job of taking that actually rather weird space and making it really a beautiful, beautiful little gallery. I'm really honored to get to show down there. Okay, so I hope I'm not going to forget anything now. I was going to tell you that I was born in a little cabin in Kentucky and go from there, but as I look around, there's way too many people in the room, so I guess I'm going to have to go with the truth, and I'll try not to use any more alternative facts than I have to. So one fact is I was born in Sedalia, Missouri. And my father was a professional baseball player at that time. He played for the old St. Louis Browns. And we traveled around a lot. I lived in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Marshall, Texas, and spent my first birthday in Puerto Rico. And when he went up to the majors, he became rather disappointed with the business of it. And so he basically left and got his education and became an educator. I think that experience left him kind of bitter. And so he was kind of moody and silent and kind of distant for most of my childhood. My mother was a real sweetheart. We used to watch things like Ozzie and Harriet and the Donna Reed show, and I think Leave It to Beaver. I don't think I was Beaver, but she was in that kind of mode where it was not unusual for her to wear earrings and a necklace and a dress, and then she cleaned the house to within an inch of its life almost every day. So when I was about 7 or 8, I was sick. My mother used to say if it was in the neighborhood, I was going to catch it. So she bought me this comic book, and I loved this thing. I just drew and drew and drew, and I drew everything in it, and I drew them over and over again. And when you can do something fairly well, you get a lot of attention, so I really like that too. And so before Bob Ross, there was John Nagy back in the 50s. And so I had this kit, and I watched him every chance I get, when I was sick or, on Sundays and that sort of stuff. And he was a good teacher, he really was. I learned a lot. So somehow I got through going to high school and grade school, I don't know how really, and got to college. I don't have much of that work left, but I still own this. My parents had this until my mother died, and so I got it back. But it sums up a little bit of kind of what I was doing in undergraduate school and kind of my attitude at that time. Well, it was the end of the 60s, and that's been romanticized, but there was a lot of bad stuff that went on, in the 60s. So this is kind of odd. This is Bernini's sculpture of Apollo and Daphne. And the reason I'm showing it is I hadn't thought about this in years. I did a whole bunch of drawings based on this. And it's about Daphne turning into a tree to disguise herself and become repugnant to Apollo's advances. And so I was really intrigued by this idea of disguise, and so I made all these drawings of these tree people and that sort of stuff. So once I got to undergraduate school, I wanted to go study printmaking. I got really interested in printmaking in undergraduate school, and I wanted to go study with Maurice Lazansky at the University of Iowa. I really loved his work at that time. And so amazingly enough, again, they gave me a couple of master's degrees, and so I got out of there. And my first job after my first master's degree was teaching at Highland Community College up in Highland, Kansas. And I'm going to kind of, these are kind of being cherry-picked because they kind of relate to the show downstairs. I was doing these things called Silo's Song. And I hadn't thought about these in ages, and as I was going through my old slides, I saw these and I thought, geez, this image has, been there much longer than I anticipated. And they're approached very much like the ones downstairs. There's collage and paint. This is watercolor. They're bigger. They're about this size. And I was showing with Dora Gates at the time, and so it was kind of nice for me. In 1982, we had the opportunity to leave Highland. Highland's only a town of about 1,000. I was getting a little itchy. And so we had the opportunity to go to Lincoln, Illinois, and Lincoln College, where our son was born. Literally just a few weeks after we moved there, and he was about 3 weeks early. He could fit in the palm of my hand. Those are doll clothes that I bought for him. So now we'd been together, Pam and I had been together for about 12, 13 years, so we had this new little entity in the house. So I was showing with Mary Bell in Chicago at that time, and again, I'd kind of forgotten about these, but as he's growing up, I'm kind of reliving my childhood, and I'm seeing these silos. My grandfather was a farmer, and he had this big silo, and there were lots of silos around central Missouri, obviously. And then on the way to Joliet, there's all these silos, and there's an ammunition factory around Joliet. And I was thinking, when I was in high school, the missile people would come in. Today would expand by about 2,000 or 3,000, and they were burying missile silos in these all around the Midwest, particularly between Sedalia and Whiteman Air Force Base. And I thought, what a gruesome irony that is these beautiful missile silos, these phallic symbols full of grain that were going to feed the world, and then these missile silos just literally parked in the ground a few feet away that were there to take it away. And so you kind of see this kind of wonderful Midwest landscape, the sunsets, but at the same time, they kind of become bomb blasts and that sort of thing, or whatever was going to happen. It was a weird time. So in 1988, I was going to take a group of students to Paris, and I went into the nurse's office, and I said, I need some permission slips, and give me something for a headache, because I have these headaches all day long. So she took my blood pressure, 180 over 120, and she said, you go to the doctor right now. So I was diagnosed with kidney failure, and my kidneys were going, but they were going the wrong direction. And so it was kind of an interesting, it was a slow decline, it was bilateral. And so in 1991, we moved here to this wonderful college in this wonderful town. And shortly thereafter, I went on peritoneal dialysis and was on that for a couple of years waiting for a kidney transplant. And then in 1993, there's kind of a theme going here with Dylan and I had that transplant. A few complications and lots of surgeries and procedures after that. So as probably a lot of you know, when you have an organ transplant, you take immunosuppressants because your body wants to reject that, so it wants to attack it. And so you take basically poison to keep your immune system from taking that kidney. So I got real interested in immune systems, but I'm not as clever as Dylan is with incorporating his lungs and that sort of thing. And I didn't want to do a bunch of big kidney paintings. It wasn't in my style and that sort of thing. So I started thinking about, everything was kind of an immune system at that time for me, and so I was thinking of cops and firemen as immune systems for a town, and particularly military as being an immune system for a country. And of course, camouflage, and artists make camouflage. And I like irony. And so the irony is that the artists were making camouflage to make people disappear, and artists are making things invisible to appear. So I sort of like that. In around 2006 or so, I saw that I'd never seen this kind. We were in Iraq. I'd never seen this kind of camouflage before. And I see these soldiers in this, obviously this house and that sort of thing. And I think, boy, here we've never had to experience that. What would that be like? And so when I had that photograph is specifically inspired my 2007 Avenue of the Arts. So there's about 5 of these up and down the Avenue of the Arts, with the idea that, I wondered if civilians or citizens would adopt this kind of a defense system or immune system, because, it might be in our own backyard, and that was 10 years ago. So seems a little bit more pertinent today now. So as I was researching camouflage, I came across dazzle camouflage, which I really kind of fell in love with. I just love those patterns. And this is obviously not to make things disappear. This was actually a type of a confusion camouflage. And it's kind of like the zebras. It's kind of based on zebras where they run in a pack, and so that the lion or the tiger can't kind of pick them out and see them. And so I got fascinated by that. And it's sort of interesting how things come full circle, because after the military, then that became, kind of like Vietnam era, where the camouflage and disruptive pattern, people, the artists and the fashion designers were picking up on that. And I just love this photograph. I found it, and I think, gosh, whatever talk I'm in, I'm going to show this. I think she's cute. So that brings me, this is the painting that's across the atrium in the Rainier Center. And so I did a lot of these in the mid-2000s. So this idea of confusion and being, just kind of overwhelmed with things, and all that kind of went into these things. So I was thinking about immune systems, and I was thinking about camouflage, and I was kind of putting all these things in here. So there's guns and people and soldiers and submarines, and when a bird loses its feathers, it kind of loses its immune system. So I was kind of wrapping all of that up into the same package. And so this is just another one from that kind of same period. And so Jerry Trilling, my friend and fellow artist who just had a show at Studio Inc., we've been doing studio exchanges for a while, and she said, "You know what? You're camouflaged." She said, "You're camouflaging as a healthy person." And I thought, that photo might have been touched up just a little bit. That might be an alternative. So that brings me to HEAP. And something that Bruce failed to mention when he introduced me is this is not the first show that HEAP has been in. It actually opened in New York at the Guggenheim. And then later at the Louvre. I was kind of stunned by their signage. I didn't expect that kind of signage. In fact, those might have been alternative facts. Actually, I was wanting to simplify those rather complex paintings, and so I was in New York at Pavel Zubak Gallery, and then George Schneemann had a show there, these little collages, and I liked the simplification, and I liked these kind of small format. So I thought, I'll use those kind of as a sketchbook, but I was calling them glimpses, because I just kind of felt that no matter everything that was going around me, I was only going to get a glimpse of reality or the truth or whatever. And also, de Kooning, in an interview at one time, described himself best as being a glimpser and sort of a slipping glimpser. And so this is kind of an homage to him, and I sort of relate to that. I feel like I'm kind of a slipping glimpser myself most of the time. So I started just ripping up everything, old prints, anything that was kind of in my studio, and I was putting back together. So these are very much like my other work, but just pared down. I was thinking about, I'm going to make bigger paintings from these. And at the time, I wasn't actually titling these. I just titled all 300 of these a few months ago because I saw some, and I saw the titles, and I saw one, I thought, it needs a title, and I can't just title 3 out of 300 glimpses. This is about that same period, too. That was actually glimpse 40. This is glimpse 42. And it just, when I was titling these things, it reminded me of this big, goofy bird, those big eyes. And so the first thing that pops in your mind, big, goofy bird, is Big Bird. And I thought, that's a lie. Big Bird's not really, it's a guy in a bird suit. So I say that in a loving way because I think I don't want to take things too seriously, but the deception that we sort of accept, and is good many times, religions oftentimes will, say it's okay not to tell the truth. And it's kind of an absurdity. And so the title is Big Bird Feigns Surprise When Finding Out She's Not a Bird. And so she's actually at the top of the heap, looking at the absurdity of kind of the rest of the display. So you see a little bit of the incorporation of the dazzle camouflage and kind of an homage to the zebra that was contributed to that. And so I was about 50 or 60 of these into this, and Bruce said, I'd like to have a show. And so he was saying, okay, we'll put a big painting here and a big painting there. No, I'm kind of working on this project. And so at about that time, probably you as well as I found this on the internet, and I'm thinking, boy, we're just inundated this. I want to know what's going on, but we're just surrounded by craziness, deception, and lies.
Lie is so unmusical a word.
Even to his suffering, I could never justify telling an outright lie.
Have we nothing in common?
So when you're sort of open to lying and that sort of stuff, you pick up on things like that maybe that, normally. And so my shift maybe got a little bit more focused at that time. And so I was looking around me, and so the news is full of things. And part of, I began to think really these things did need titles. And I know they're not titled downstairs, but we've got maps that you can actually see. And so I put the titles on there, but I'm more than happy for people to look at them and see whatever they look at them. I'm kind of done with them. I kind of got my thing, and so now, if you read the titles, you kind of just see what I'm thinking, unfortunately. But you can feel free to make up your own stories. I kind of like the ambiguity of them, and particularly the openness of interpretation. When I did this one, I didn't have both. There was only one of those polyhedrons. They were whatever they're called, shape. And when I put the other one in there, all of a sudden that face came up. And I thought, yeah, that's about right. So the title of this one is, I mean, in the light of all that's around us. And also, the exhibit is sort of like this overwhelming of all these images. And so there's a point where you just kind of get exasperated. So when I saw this, it reminded me of a bull, specifically of Picasso's bull, that is a very famous one where he uses a bicycle seat and the handlebars. And his bull is pronounced bull. Mine is pronounced bull. So I know a lot of those collages are kind of out of the way and you can't see them, so you can go to my website and it's got all the titles. It was just updated, and make your way to Glimpses and you'll be able to see those. And if you can't remember my website name, don't Google just Larry Thomas, because this guy is going to be the one that's going to show up. I can't unseat him from the top of the Google search. Thank you.